Hello, 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 everyone. Happy Halloween. Happy Monday. And we all know Monday sucks, so Halloween on Monday doesn't even help. But it's happy Halloween. Welcome to Monday Sucks. We are here, believe it or not, for us that have kids. We already took them get some candies, but we get to have our own adult candies, aka whiskey, aka bourbon, aka whatever actually sweet you have out there. But today is a special show because we have a guest. And you know what I always love is our ability to actually bring on people that are so cool on the market. But yet, you almost literally the only reason I wanted to have these guests is I want to know who are the people behind this brand because they always bringing out stuff, they're everywhere. They're like, they're becoming a household name now, and they choose probably the best name in the business. They literally call themselves what we already call a barrel. So it took me only a year to know how to write their name because it was 2L at the end. But I'm done yipping and yapping. There is someone here. This is why this is what Tim does that literally make me want to just get in the camera and just choke him some days. He, for the first time, we started this show on time. But guess who is now ready in front of their camera now? Tim. He's literally cutting in and out of his camera. And I don't even want to actually bring him on now. The man with the faulty
Bring me
camera.
on. Bring me on. I don't got a faulty camera. I'm
The
getting
man
ready.
with the faulty
It's
camera.
Halloween, baby! Woo! It's Halloween. Let's go.
So, what is a pirate hat?
Nah, dude. Adventure's out there, friends. We're going to drink some bourbon. In my plane, I'm ready to fly into the show. Let's go.
What is a hat about?
Well, I couldn't wear a whole costume. I do have a Halloween shirt on. Here we go. But since here's the thing. Here's the thing.
Is it a pirate hat? Is it a peasant hat?
Man, it's a pilot. French. It's a freaking pilot. It's a pilot hat, bro. Come on.
Is it leather?
Yes.
You see, this is why I don't dress up for Halloween, people. It's because half of the time I don't know what people are. Like, the only thing I can distinguish is probably a sexy nurse, a sexy maid. Everything else, I don't know what you are. Like, sometimes people dress up and I'm like, I'm confused. Are you dressed up as confused? Because I'm confused. But anyway.
It looks weird in this lighting, but I swear, it's a pilot's hat.
You know what? Good for you, buddy. Don't let your dreams ever die. just
gotta wear what you got.
You see, old school football helmet. I said it. I thought it was a helmet. That's what I thought. But old school,
I'll take that helmet. Too. I don't care.
Happy Halloween, everyone. If you have something on today, hell yeah, wear it and have a good time. As far as we are concerned, that's a no for me. That would be a negative for me.
Man, you got no sense of adventure.
I don't understand how people dress up. I don't know what that's about. I don't get it. But if you dress up, good for you. Good for you. You know what? We're gonna reverse this and we're gonna quickly just bring you up on. We're gonna open up the show by literally talking about what we always do, which is what are we drinking? What are we drinking? What are we drinking? What are we drinking today? What are we drinking?
What are you drinking?
What are you drinking?
What am I drinking?
Yeah. What are you drinking?
Right now, I'm drinking a lovely Ethiopian blend from Stave and Bean Coffee, finished in peach bitters barrels, and a lovely bit of Barrell Bourbon inside it too.
Barrell Bourbon.
Top
all
it
of
up.
you guys that are here, today we are drinking our guest, and not just because he's our guest, but because we actually love the juice. So I'll have to be honest with y'all. Before we even had them on the show, I literally said, when it comes to, remember I told you guys one day, when I started in this whole whiskey content review thing, a lot of brands told me to fuck off. Now,
It's
those
true.
brands are the one who come to me and go, "Oh, would you post our stuff? Would you do this?" And I usually say, "Here are my price sheets. We are not friends. We are not friends." Because when I started and I reach out to y'all and I wanted just to know a little bit about y'all, have you on the show, have you came, you actually told me to fuck off in a nice way, which is more of like silent. But guess who did not say that? Barrel.
Barrel did
And
not
as you
say
can
that.
see, Barrel doesn't pay me anything, but every time they have a press release, is literally on my page immediately. Why? Because I never met the people behind the brand. Right, today's gonna be the first time I'm meeting someone. I met one of the brand ambassador here in Omaha for the Omaha Whiskey Fest, but today is gonna be the first time I met someone that actually is with the brand. Uh, and I'm telling you, the nicest people. I should have worn my sweater, right? They're the first brand that I bought their sweater. Um, I love the merchandise, high quality, but they're the first people that said, we don't have a packaging or any sample yet, but we'll send you a little bit of whiskey of what we release. Hopefully you like it. And I'm like, really? Aren't you guys new? Yeah, we don't, they were, I mean, the message I received back, I was like, oh, so let's just say that Barrel gave me hope to keep going when I was actually new and did not know where I was going. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the man, the myth, the legend himself. Wee, wee,
Hey.
what's up, Willie?
What up, Will?
It's quite the introduction, though. I think a little more suited for Joe Beatrice, the founder of the company. But I'll take man, myth, legend on Halloween, dressing up as one at least.
Yeah, so we'll welcome to Monday Sucks, aka the shit show. For all of you guys that love Barrel, this is your opportunity to know more about Barrel. I tell people all the time, you can buy something from a brand. You can spend your money on a brand, either based on someone like me, the jerks online that tells you that something is good, either because somebody paid us to say so, or because we actually do like it, or we just bullshitting you. But when you know the people behind the brand, how the whiskey is made, spending money on it does not hurt at all, and it amplify your curiosity to also bring your criticism to the brand on what you like and don't like and help them do better. So this is the show. If you're on Facebook, share this with your grandma if she likes whiskey, because Facebook is for old people, I heard. If you're on YouTube, make sure you follow the channel, make sure you subscribe and share this with your friend. Have them come here and hear about Barrel. Will is here. We have a lot of questions from him. And Barrel has released so many things in the last 2 years that this show is going to be full of question, full of knowledge, and even just justify why you should spend your money on Barrel. So, Will, let's start by you. Who are you and why are you representing Barrel?
Well, yeah, I'm Will Tragus. I was the first employee of Barrel Craft Spirits unofficially in 2015, and then
the man,
officially in 2016. And so my title has sort of changed over the years a little bit based on what size distributor we need to take me seriously in a business card, or whatever function a title serves these days. But really, my job at the company is like sort of being the fixer of, like, we have a new challenge because we grow and someone has to be in charge of it. It ends up being me. I look after the sales team, which is the best team in the business in my mind. We're up to 14 people on our sales team now, which is wild because it was just Joe, and then it was just me and Joe for so long. And then I also work with Joe on product development or whiskey development. And so I by no means am a blender the way that Tripp, our chief whiskey scientist or head blender, is, or Nick, who's on the blending team with him. But
what is her handle so we can put it here in the comment?
I do not know Tripp and Nick's personal handle off the top of my head.
All right, no
Nick
problem.
has one though, so I will find it when you guys are talking. I'll find it.
No worries. No
I
worries.
have to admit, for someone who represents whiskey, I should be much more adept at social media. But I was so young when I entered the industry, and I was so determined not to be the like stereotypical millennial who gets put in charge of social media that I like avidly avoided it for so long that now I'm backwards about it. I have to ask for the company Instagram password whenever I do an Instagram live now because I don't have my own to log into. But anyway, my main job, the thing that I love most, is working with Joe on the conceptual design of our whiskeys, because I very much believe that when you're designing something new in the alcohol industry, you have to first make something that is delicious, but then you have to figure out how to communicate that in a vacuum. So you figure out what promises to make people, and then you have to deliver on those promises with the liquid itself. And what I think we strive to do, and knock wood, feel like we've done really well, is lived up to the own expectations we set with our bottles, and sweat a lot of details that a lot of other companies and brands and producers of whiskey may not have sweat 5 or 6 years ago, like the dedication to cask strength, or one thing that I always like to point out when people ask, even though it doesn't matter, is we use real cork in all of our bottles because of the importance of like the feeling of opening a stopper with real cork instead of synthetic cork.
Yeah.
And focusing very much on this ultra premium price point of we know we would never be able to compete at $28 a bottle, but at 80 or 90 or 120 or $250, making a bottle that we feel is the best on the shelf at that price.
Let me stop you. Let me stop you there. You guys are not. No, you guys offer everything for all sort of people.
Mm-hmm.
I think in this market right now, Tim, if you agree with me, a $79 bottle is no longer ultra premium. It's just It's just a regular bottle now.
Yeah. But it's wild because we were 79 and 6 years ago, and we're still 79, which is a lot of times because of the cost of getting things around, that places that it used to be 79, it's 84 now, just because it's not just the inflation of the price of the whiskey itself, it's the inflation of transport and all of the different costs of doing business for stores and distributors and such. But it is wild to think about, like our base range, the batches of bourbon haven't really taken a price increase in 6 years now, which is
pretty true.
Which is a good thing. Which is, for me, is a good thing. So the funny thing was, I discovered Barrell as an ultra premium barrel. I will tell you, I discovered Barrell when I was, very active in the secondary market. Believe it or not, 2019. My first ever barrel owned was your release of the black box, the first batch one of your barrel,
the gray label bourbon. Yeah,
that one. That's still my all-time whiskey till today.
That thing is delicious.
It's
probably one of the best things you guys have ever put out.
So the first time I just had to taste it, I'm like, holy shit, these people are onto something. So it's one of those things where I was like, I don't understand how this is possible. Who are these people? How was it blend? Let me know more about them. So today you're here. So tell us how, 2015. So we're about 7 years in.
Mm-hmm.
How does this come about? So first of all, people need to understand. The one thing we need to make clear here from the beginner level up to end, how did Barrell come about? And the how, what I really mean is it your grandfather third leg cut into a steel, making this bourbon while all the tears of your grandmother made it sweeter and better?
Joe found a call to action in his uncle's corpse.
Correct. Or is it the regular rigmarole where you went and looked at, some barrel in Indiana and came back and went, hey, we're going to take all this and we're going to make something great out of it. So that's how, when I ask how did he come about, that's what I...
So Joe, before he was in the whiskey industry, owned a company called Blue Dingo that was a marketing and communication solutions company. And they worked in a lot of different industries, but one of his specialties was working with alcohol industries, specifically as they were moving on to the internet with their marketing and communications.
Okay.
And so he worked with like Jose Cuervo, he worked with Castle Brands, he worked with some Canadian whiskeys. He had all of these clients that were in the alcohol industry, but he was in charge of consumer interaction, if you will, or advising on that. And his favorite way to drink while he was doing that job was tasting barrel samples in Kentucky. So you fast forward to 2013 when he sort of starts Barrell as a legal entity, and he recognizes in the whiskey industry at the time that the bourbon world, from a brand perspective, was way behind where its consumers were. The brands were still obsessed with this brand identity focus of like, I'm a Jim Beam guy, I'm a Wild Turkey guy. But there are more and more people who are looking for something new when they walk into the store. And similarly, there was basically no cask strength bourbon. There was like George T. Stagg. There was, I'm trying to think of what else. There was Booker's. And there was almost nothing else that really was around with in any permanent way. And so Joe had decided, I'm going to start a company that does only cask strength. I'm going to start a company that always has something new when you walk into the store. And it started off the portfolio was very different and much simpler than it is now. It was Barrell Bourbon Batch 1. And the idea was Barrell Bourbon Batch 1 runs out and Barrell Bourbon Batch 2, which is a totally new concept, comes. And Joe went asking around for sets of barrels from different distilleries and brokers, saying like, I don't need it to be the same every time. I actually only want something that is only going to exist once. And he got, I don't want to say like laughed at, but he got like a lot of people didn't take the concept seriously because the wisdom of the time was cask strength can be a limited offering. $70 or $80 on the shelf can be something that you pop into with around Christmas, but it can't be your core.
The day to day.
And Joe was like, no, I want to focus on cask strength, expensive, good American whiskey, and that's going to be. Company's not going to bother itself with things that it can't be the best at. And so you fast forward 2 years or so, and Tripp, who still runs all of our blending operations, and I had joined the company, and we were launching. We had bourbon batch 5 in the market, and we were launching bourbon batch 6. And the only difference between bourbon 5 and 6 was it was the same set of barrels, but the ones that had been stored at the bottom of the rickhouse were batch 6. The ones that had been on the top of the rickhouse were batch 5, I believe.
Okay, so let me ask. I feel like you kind of give us a corner of it. So he went and got barrel from multiple places. It's not just Kentucky. It's not just Indiana. Because one thing I realized behind all the barrels, every time you guys put out press release, you always be like Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana. You always will make blend from all around the place. So is barrel the basic concept is we're going around tasting the best we can. We buying as much as we can, and then we blend it to actually have its own identity.
So we control our own space completely, but we work with, at this point, I believe it's 68 different distilleries.
Okay.
And the idea is to make things that are greater than the sums of their parts, but also make things that never could be made in any one place before.
Perfect.
Perfect. And when you're a distillery, be it grain to glass or not, there's a lot of fixed parts of whiskey production, the shape of your stills, the ecosystem in which you're fermenting and or aging barrels, the climate where you are, the people who work there and their opinions about whiskey and or like what their distillation schedule or season allows them to make. And so single distilleries, though like beautiful and unique, are limited by their own capacity to do what's possible in that place. And when we are tasting barrels and we're looking at barrels for our production, we're not looking at them as, is this a good whiskey or not? We're looking at them as, is this a good ingredient?
Okay.
So what I've kind of come to think of it as, because I and our company are really dedicated to respecting and applauding all places within the chain of what ultimately ends up in any bottle, but especially ours, is there's restaurants in the world that are farm to table. Everything's from within 100 miles, and they're beautiful restaurants. They're some of the best restaurants in the world. And then there's restaurants in the world that use amazing ingredients from all over the place, and they make things that are not classically from any one place. They're sort of new, inventive cuisine.
Okay.
And we think of ourselves as the latter, not because it's a better model, but because that's what we are passionate about. And so we're looking for really authentic, unique ingredients, but we're trying to make them into whiskeys that are unlike anything else made in the world and not something that ever could be made at one distillery.
Okay. So as far as your team is concerned, what do we have? We have, as far as the breakdown, do you have how many people do you have on your blending team? So I'm sure you have purchasing, somebody who's going out there and actively looking for barrels. You have the blenders, and
yes and no. All of the decisions about the whiskey specifically are made by 4 people. It's Joe, the owner and founder, Trip Stimson, who's again the other original employee with me, Nick Christensen, who started as our single barrel program manager, but she's so wildly talented that she almost immediately ended up on the blending team as well. And then me when I'm in Kentucky, but I'm only in Kentucky for a week a month.
So what, you guys blend in Kentucky?
We do. So we control our own facility, and it's about 15 minutes from the airport in Louisville.
Okay, perfect. So break this down for me. So as far as your whiskeys are concerned, I would say by not by innovation, but on the market, we have the regular release, which usually are your batches, right? And obviously we have the seagrass that also, I don't know if that ever come in batches, but it's just the seagrass.
So the seagrass is what we call an evergreen item. It always exists and is always available. But when we do the vattings of seagrass, when we need to produce more, we're always making the ingredients of seagrass, but we blend them to taste, not to proof. So the proof on seagrass changes occasionally. And in the sample bottle that you have, I don't think it would be there, but in a normal sized bottle, there's people at home watching, all the way on the right side of the label where the 2 colors meet. You're never going to be able to see it in the camera here.
Yeah.
But there's what looks like a smudge, but it's actually what the vatting number is. And that is our Easter egg for the deep nerds of the whiskey world to be able to know which time of the blend.
And that's on all your like batch stuff. So that's all on Dovetail.
It's on Dovetail, Armida, Seagrass, and Vantage.
There you go.
So by category, can you break it down for us? If somebody had to start in exploring, right, barrels today, we're gonna taste according to that. Where do we start?
So I would say let's start with Bourbon Batch 33 then, because our bones of a company are a bourbon company. We were called Barrell Bourbon for a very long time. And also because we're tasting 3 bourbons here, so we may as well do them all together.
So we're looking at Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, and you guys put USA, which means that is from somewhere else.
No, everything in this particular batch is from Kentucky, Tennessee, or Indiana.
Okay. So batch 33. So you guys are on your 33rd batch of these release.
Yes, it is, I guess, technically the 35th because we had 2 secondary releases. Batch 7 and 8 had a 7B and an 8B. But it's the 33rd set of barrels blended together, if you will.
Okay. And this batch 33, which I don't know what is it about. So I have this conspiracy theory, and follow me here. I truly believe your uneven number batches are better than your even number batches. That's just me. I don't know what it is. I sat down and went through 29, 31, and 33. Okay. Then I went and did 28, 30, and 32.
So I can kind of speak to that because I've been drinking barrels since batch 6, and batch 6 and batch 9 and batch 11 are like some of the best OG batches.
Mhm.
So no, they're
I,
just
I don't know what it is. I just feel like every time an even number batch comes out, I'm like, it's good, but it's
So
missing the zing. But then the uneven numbers, I'm like, he has that pepperiness, that little spice, almost that weird rye spice adjacent that I like.
so I don't want to put too much of a dagger in the heart of your conspiracy theory. There is no specific odd versus even or multiples or anything code with the barrels.
Okay.
However, especially in the mid to late 20s, we did have a moment when we were working with a lot of 8 and 9 and 10 and 11-year-old barrels
Okay.
that were very oak driven, and we had sort of two styles of blends we were making. Some where we blended the oak out of those barrels, and some where we left them to be very oaky. And it wasn't on purpose, but to have contrast, we ended up having every other batch be pretty oaky for a while. And so people who liked...
So I am right in some ways.
So in the 20s, and it really stopped at 30, because 29 was a very sort of a spice and fruit forward batch, and then 30 was also.
30 was less. 29 for some reason.
I really 27 and 29 were two of my favorites ever.
I'm telling you, I don't know what is it about the uneven numbers. It is just something about them that just had that.
Yeah. So I feel like there's a sub style to our blend that you might like more. It's not always the uneven, like the odd numbers though, because for instance, 16 was a very fruit forward batch that me and a lot of other people in the company really loved, and same thing with 27. So it wasn't always the odd numbers, but I do hear what you're saying, and I want to instill some confidence in your own palate that you're not crazy about it, but it is not an even versus odds.
It's just maybe, and I thought it was just maybe it was just a fluke. Till I actually went through, because I started receiving samples since 2028,
right?
And I bought 25 and 24, 5 and 6 myself. So it's one of those things where I was like, oh, it's just a fluke, but no.
28 was interesting that 28 won a lot of big awards. It was a very heavy oaky batch, really weighty, like very mouth coating batch. But 25, 27, 29 on the sales team, we all loved it. And so we were convinced that also 26 was kind of within the company, a lot of people liked it. We were convinced that 26, 27, 29 was going to win a really big, get a huge write-up. And we had gone so far as to hold back some of that stock so that if it won Best Bourbon in San Francisco or, USA Today wrote about you name it, we'd have a couple cases to offer whiskey bars and stuff. And we thought we were like so smart. And then San Francisco comes out and 28 wins Best Small Batch Bourbon. And it was the one that none of us expected to win that year. And it's like, no matter what, no good deed goes unpunished.
How many batches? Average, how many barrels goes in a batch?
So we are really dedicated in putting the batches together to have them be as good as they possibly can be. So they actually vary wildly, not like, crazy, but they'll be anywhere from 2,000 6-packs to 5,000 6-packs, depending on how much can we make. Do we have a limiting factor in the blend? And one of the ways that we have instilled quite a bit of quality control is we'll never dump barrels directly into a blend. We always sort the barrels and dump into sub blends first.
Okay.
And then we make blends out of those tanks. And the reason for that is it's impossible to think what any one barrel is doing to another 35 or 45 or 50 barrels at the same time. But if you're able to narrow it down into 3 or 5 or 7 ingredients, you're not just thinking about what does the ingredient do to the blend. You're thinking about what it does to all of the other ones at the same time.
As a whole, yeah.
And so, and it also allows us to really hone in on ingredients where we'll say like, okay, we want to have backbone and structure. So we're going to take the over oaked barrels and we're going to blend them together to have this like structural component. And then we have a fixed product that we can test in the lab with, 2 drops in 200 milliliters, 500 milliliters in 1 gallon, and see what the perception threshold and staying power of each one of those is. And so from a volume standpoint, if you're thinking of a 8-ish-year-old barrel, let's say, you're going to get about 12 9-liter cases out of it, 12 packs. And so if you think of let's call it 1,000 or 1,200 case batch, that would be 100.
Don't get too technical,
barrels,
because
right?
even my brain
Just
can't.
barrels, man. Let's just break it down to barrels.
So
how many barrels?
I would
how
think
many
of it
barrels
as,
are going into each batch?
I would think of it as about 100 is the way to think about it.
100
so like 100 barrels per batch.
Yeah, but what I want to sort of make sure people are realizing is that the batches are made out of sub blends. So it's not like we've got here's 100 barrels and those 100 barrels went into the batch. It's here's 4,000 gallons of tanks that we have blended already to be good ingredients that become the batch.
Okay.
And
so it's like cooking, right? It's like cooking. So you guys are maybe you using a little bit of tomato sauce, a little bit of tomato paste, and a little bit of salt. So you're thinking, but 100 barrels into a blend or a batch?
So I'm just thinking volumetrically.
Let's say batch 33. Can you kind of think of, if it's batch 33, how many barrels went into batch 33?
Right. So let me just do a little quick math here.
Yeah, because even everybody is surprised, like 100 barrels, because
I'd say there were about 50 barrels worth of liquid in batch 33, but it doesn't mean that it was 50 whole barrels that went in. What I'm saying is there might have been as many as 100 ingredients that went into that.
Okay, all right,
because they were vatted into different.
I was a little confused. I'm like 100 barrels.
So it sounds like to me that the facility in Louisville is not barrels, it's vats, and you guys are pulling from vats.
Yeah, and there are some barrels there, but we actually work with a bunch of off-site warehouses as well, because when we buy what we call like a lot of barrels, let's say there's 200, we're going to use them over the course of the next 3 or 5 years. We want to create as much differentiation as we can, so we don't keep them all in one place, because that will allow for 1 or 2 or 4 or 8 or 12 or 16 seasons of aging in different aging environments.
Okay.
And it's interesting because a lot of our processes have been things that we've just created for ourselves, because there's really nobody in America blending with the sophistication. It sounds like a really conceited word, but with the levels of processes that we are right now. But we've gone back and learned more about what a lot of other distillate traditions in the world do, and more what I realize is we actually have a little bit of a cognac style aging situation where we have wet, damp, and temperature controlled areas, and we have hot, dry areas, and we'll put the same set of barrels into 2 places, and after a year or 2 they'll be very different. And that happens a lot in cognac, where they have wet cellars and dry cellars, and they use them to age cognac into different sort of outcomes, whether they want to be sweeter or more structural or more oak driven or higher proof, so on and so forth. Someone, Bourbon Jeeper, just asked who is bottling in a house or a contracted bottler.
You guys do all your own bottling?
We do all of our own bottling, yeah. And believe me, it is a pain in the ass. The people on our bottling team and the true heroes of our company, a man named Ryan Poe, who's our director of distillery operations, a man named Ryan Smith, who's our bottling manager. Not only is getting things into bottles correctly and with the right fill level and with the labels on correct, like straight and all that, really, really difficult and complicated. Our bottle, especially because it's not a round bottle, so it has to be what's like a stamp label. There's no good machinery for it. The machines break down all the time.
So do you guys use a specific? You guys built your own machine for it?
We now have 3 of them, and it's a bottling line that we bought, but it has to be adjusted, and there's so many times that I'll be in Kentucky and someone will notice a label a little bit to the right, and you'll see Ryan Smith or Ryan Poe will like fix something with a screwdriver, and then the labels will start being on correctly again, and it's amazing to see how focused in on like that specific thing they are. And if you're contracting bottling, it ends up costing people $40, $50, $60, $70 a case just to have someone put the liquid into the bottle. And not to mention there's very little quality control because people don't want you in their business if they're bottlers. And so one of the reasons that we are able to do things so uniquely at Barrell Craft Spirits is because all of our blending is done by only us in a space that we control, and we can get into at any time of the day that we want, and we can do whatever work we want to do in it. And we set our own bottling time and sort of a sequence. And because of that, we can be a lot more nimble and flexible with what we want to do.
Okay.
So from having 2 blending tanks, and you guys are going to be moving to have 10 blending tanks, how does that work right now? Working on batches, with your, I know you guys have like a 5-year plan to expand, like I said, going from 2 tanks to 10 tanks and 2 bottling lines to 4 bottling lines. Mm-hmm. Doing batches, how is it using those blending tanks? Are you vatting and then going back and blending? Like how does that working? Like having
so if you imagine a kitchen, because we keep using that analogy, and the rectangular prism storage containers that people put like pasta and or cereal and stuff in a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So we have 2 very large blending tanks, and then we have our 2 old tanks, which are about 1,000 gallons. So we have 2 5,000-gallon tanks right now and 2,000-gallon tanks. But then we have plethora of interchangeable stainless steel vats that can be connected to each other. And so there's a lot of, you blend something, you get it right, and then you sort of lock it up in the vats. And so though we are like bursting at the seams capacity wise in terms of the space, what we do is try to have more and more things neatly organized and in containers in these stainless steel vats that are very easy for us to transfer from one another, and they're all fixed volumes, and so we know what fits into something else really easily. And that was actually like a huge process for us and very expensive because giant stainless steel things cost a lot of money. And moving slowly to the point where everything is easily transferred into something and we know how much space it will take up in the thing it's being moved to allowed us to work on more than 2 projects at a time. It allows us to work on 7 or 8 or 10 projects at a time.
Okay.
And it also allows us to make one blend that can be used for more than one thing because we know that we can split it up in predictable ways.
Okay.
Well, let's get some whiskey in you, get you loosened up, and
let's talk about the whiskey that pretty much started people on talking more about Barrell. Let's talk about Seagrass because I feel like when Seagrass came out, the whole market kind of shift because it's the first whiskey that you guys did and include some Canadian.
Yeah. So we
are we not even going to talk about batch 33 then?
We just talked about batch 33.
We talked about processes. We didn't talk about the batch.
It's really up to you guys. I'm happy to talk about any of them. 33 is a really cool batch for us that it sort of started. It's a very classic batch for us because it uses some very sweet corn forward bourbon and some very, very high rye bourbon. And it also has some of this vat that Nick calls the secret sauce, which is really old, very low proof yielding barrels. Anytime we have a barrel that is older than like 10 or 11 years and it's under 105 proof or so when it comes out, it usually gets vatted into this ingredient that we use in a bunch of our blends. And the reason for that is it is not super complex, but it's just like objectively delicious. The cogeners in oak, there's certain cogeners that are alcohol soluble and there's certain cogeners that are water soluble. And the water soluble ones often give you a lot more of the like baking spice and vanilla and sweetness. And so when you have whiskey that sat in the barrel at a lower proof for longer, you end up with higher amounts of water soluble cogener, which is something that is often missing in young bourbon. So even really good young bourbon doesn't have as much water soluble cogener as older lower proof bourbon does. And so the secret sauce of batch 33 is taking these really aggressive, delicious, but like kind of harsh sets that are a little bit younger, and softening them up and connecting them with the older bourbon. And that's a technique that we use often.
Isn't it how most of your process go? Because if I look at the last 3 batches that you guys release, and that's why I didn't ask any more detail, because I feel like that's how you guys blend as far as your style.
Yeah.
You don't use, unless you guys are doing the gray label. Most of your batches are usually a blend of older and some few new that you're bringing in to kind of bring that oomph to, unless I'm wrong.
Yeah, we very rarely do batches that are over 7 or 8 years now.
Okay.
And a lot of that is, if you look at all of the batches that won big awards from us, they all were these, like, the greater variety of flavors you can get into the bottle, the better. And so it became sort of the house technique of having these vats that are constantly being re-upped. But also, if you think about the process of making ingredients rather than just making the blends, every time you introduce a new barrel into one of those vattings that gets used as an ingredient, the age statement becomes whatever the youngest barrel that ever went into it was at that age. And so we have a lot of these ingredients that have many, many different ages in them. And in fact, they have oxidation of different ages. So a barrel that's been sitting with air above it in stainless steel for 2 years is going to taste different than an identical barrel on paper that gets dumped into it. Because things still change in stainless steel. They still oxidize.
Understandable.
And so just we have so much at our disposal that is declassified age-wise. We just are really careful about not using something that's so young that it would mislead a consumer as to not being properly aged.
Understandable.
But that's an astute comment. We have since 28, I think, we haven't put something out that was over 8 years.
So it's still Kentucky, Indiana. So I'm assuming these barrels are in, and now you are introducing Canadian rye into it, right?
So Seagrass it's a blend of 3 different components.
Okay.
It's a Canadian rye blend that goes into the apricot brandy barrels.
Okay.
And then it's 2 separate domestic rye blends, one of which goes into the Malmsey Madeira barrels, and one of which goes into the rum agricole casks.
So what type of? So is it more Canadian rye that you guys are using, and adding a little bit of that Kentucky?
No, it's volumetrically it ends up being not too far from 50-50 between the two.
Okay.
But what is interesting is Canadian rye is often higher proof, but it has a lot less oak on it, and because of that, depending on which flavor you're thinking about, it might be much more imparted from one ingredient to the other.
So is it why you guys are calling it rye whiskey, because you're using at least 50% of Canadian rye?
No, so it's a rye whiskey because all of the ingredients would be called rye at the place that they were distilled.
Okay.
So the American components are American rye, use 100% new oak, and the Canadian components are Canadian rye, which is, Canada has all sorts of weird laws about what you can call it. They have kind of no laws about rye, but I think one is in the 90% rye and one is 100% rye.
Okay.
I need to get a new glass. Woo! All right.
Yeah.
So where was the decision to go with a gray label Seagrass? Because you guys had this product Seagrass come out, and then you guys did this special release of Seagrass. What was the idea there, and why did you do that?
So when we originally released the Gray Label, we first designed it just to be bourbon. We called it the Barrel Craft Spirits Bourbon.
Yeah, the Barrel Craft Spirit.
But we pretty quickly found ourselves with the opportunity to buy these really crazy rum ingredients, but they were way too expensive for a normal blend for us, and so it became the Gray Label rum. And the same thing happened with a 25-year-old American whiskey that we released that same year. And so we had this concept of Gray Label, but we haven't really produced a lot of rum in the past couple of years, and we don't really have a barrel whiskey anymore. We have Dovetail, we have an Infinite Barrel project. We don't have barrel whiskey. And so the decision was made to stop, at least temporarily, producing Gray Labels that didn't sit above something else in our portfolio. And so we had access to and had owned some old rye for a while, and we decided to do the Seagrass process to those barrels to thus change Seagrass from being a singular whiskey and more to be its own portfolio. And so we had the Gray Label Seagrass, and we have a Gold Label Seagrass too, which is up to 20 years in the blend.
Bourbon Jeeper had a really interesting question. He said, so is this vatted stainless steel process effectively a continuous infinity blend that is spread across various batches of releases?
I wouldn't call it an infinity blend necessarily, because I think an infinity blend is designed to have each edition change it.
Okay.
I think, and there are plenty of times that we use the end of a vat in a batch. What I think is more important to think about is we will make a good ingredient on purpose, but we may use that ingredient in several batches. And so what is the base of one batch might be like a adjustment technique in another batch. And that allows us to blend more efficiently, if that makes sense, because we can work really hard on something and use it more than once.
Yeah, so that's the same thing that Bourbon Jeepers was asking is, so is it vatted stainless steel process effectively a continuous infinity blend? Because it seemed like is when you vat it and is set, you use it for a while.
We use it, yeah.
The new one.
I think what is important about it, and the reason I like to talk about it when I'm on shows like this that have people who are asking really serious questions, is we work as a company in a way that we don't really know anyone else that works the way that we do. And it's part of that is this multi-step blending philosophy of you have to make your ingredients before you can make the blend. Otherwise, you're kind of shooting in the dark with getting barrels and dumping them together. And so there aren't exact answers to any of this. Just like when people ask me, like, what's the exact recipe? I can't really tell people that anymore, because there's things that have been adjusted so many times that go into a batch. It's not like 10 barrels of this and 10 barrels of that and call it a day. Not to mention that, like, at different proofs, things become different ratios in strange ways. And so, Bourbon Jeeper, you're not wrong, but it's not the way that I would choose to describe it.
Somebody's calling it maybe like a Solera method.
Similarly, like if you look at the way that Soleras were designed in Jerez, they have a specific rule of, like, you fill a certain number of barrels and then you take a certain amount out of each one and put it into other barrels together, and as it gets older. And there's a lot of whiskey producers that say Solera, but it's not really a Solera. And to my knowledge, the only whiskey that says Solera that I know of as really kind of being a Solera is Glenfiddich 15.
I was about to say Glenfiddich is the only, because the method actually was adopted and taught at Glenfiddich a lot to other distilleries all around Scotland on how to properly do a Solera barrel.
Right.
So So I want to actually jump into the newest one before we go to what I would consider your
Hmm.
premium product, and that's
Vantage.
the vintage.
Yeah.
So, from what I read when the vintage came out, for all of you guys who don't know, this is what the vintage look like. The vintage is one of your newest release. Uh, I have to say I was a little confused about the message of the vintage
Huh.
because the vintage is said to be your new regular expression
Hmm.
for people to have, available for everyone to enjoy. But yet, you guys have used, if I read on this, probably if I have to speak like in barrel language, some seriously expensive ingredient to
Yeah.
make this, right? So, uh, not to actually tag you with somebody, but are you trying to go better ingredients, better whiskey for for people with the vintage? Because a Mizunara barrel, if you don't understand it, is a very expensive barrel.
Hmm.
French oak and toasted American oak, those are expensive barrels.
Yeah.
You just don't see them just sitting around. So for you to bring out this vintage whiskey and make it available for all, where's the catch?
So I think the catch is we're not a new company anymore. We're a 10-year-old company, and we started the processes that went into this a long time ago. Um, and yeah, there was a huge investment, not only in making Vantage, but making Vantage enough Vantage so that it was not a secondary market whiskey. And it's funny because I feel like we are perceived as sometimes as being too available sometimes.
Yeah,
Uh,
I will have to say that's sometime in some market you guys are not, because when I started, and that's the reason why I brought out, well, I went to the bunker to bring out
Mhm.
my barrels, because my barrels bottles, when I got them, were never to actually just, I have my barrel bottle that I open and drink, but the one, literally, I started having barrel as, again, a premium product, and I opened the first barrel I own literally as a gift to myself for my birthday 2 years ago.
Huh.
Because at that time we were talking a $300 bottle 3 years ago, it wasn't small change.
Yeah, it
And when I
wasn't. It
had that,
wasn't very
this,
common either. That's the
yeah,
Yeah,
thing that's crazy.
and
I
since then I was like, okay, this is a premium product. It sits at the same level as the higher end level that I have. And since then, the only one I do not own is the New Year one, because I truly believe is bullshit, if you excuse my language. But I'm just gonna let you live with that one. But since then, I've owned every single premium one I can get my hand on, from the seagrass to the rum, to the bourbon one. I actually have a backup of the bourbon one that I actually got. I have the whiskey one, the one that the Canadian whiskey one that you guys did, the premium one.
Mhm.
I have the rum one. Every single premium one that you guys have, I own.
Well,
And
first
these
of
are,
all, thank you for being such a supporter. It's
no, I told you before, I'm a fan. I am a fan of the brand. But sometimes I have questions, because it's like, when some products start coming out, I say, okay, uh, is is this where the brand is going to? You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Because there's nothing wrong with being exclusive, right? I truly believe sometimes there's nothing wrong with being exclusive. There's sometime, I love when I go to festival and I see Barrel there, and I tell you, Barrel makes a mean, mean, mean slushy. You're
Yeah,
doing a
the
slushy
seagrass
at
slushy.
home,
Yeah.
pour a Barrel in there, you're gonna feel it. But there's something to say about a brand being exclusive and having an exclusive product that only a certain people can get their hands on, because of the quality of, like you said, the ingredient that goes into it. So I started looking at Barrel originally as this brand that is only premium. So when I look for barrels, I don't even, for a long time, I would say for like a year or so, I've only been looking for barrel as, where can I get my premium bottles at?
Mhm. So I think
Till
what's
about a year, till about 6 months ago, it just seemed like, whew, is now everywhere on the market, and you can have every barrel you want, and obviously I love, the truth is barrel proof. That's my tagline. I love that everything is castrate. I love that you guys actually, bring, nice product at castrate. But to release a bourbon or a whiskey that is a Mizorana barrel, toasted oak. I mean, when you hear that as a whiskey person in your ear, you're like, oh shit, I'm about to pay at least 150 to 200 for this type of whiskey. Knowing that previously on the market, some brands came out with their Mizorana barrel, which is about $500. Other came out with their special Mizorana toasted bullshit barrel, and it was almost $1,000. So what's the message from I know you're trying to explain it, but I want people to hear it from you and understand why should they run after vintage, because I know I've tasted vintage. I thought it was amazing,
so
but why
the
you make it
purpose of
available to
Vantage
everybody?
was we wanted to make a bourbon that was in this evergreen line, and we wanted to make something that was uniquely ours and could only be made by us. And we spent years working on not only making the blend as good as possible, but making the blend possible in terms of the pricing and the stock and the viability of it going forward. Which is why we named it Vantage. It's named after like a vantage point or our perspective on the whiskey industry or the bourbon industry. And we wanted it to read very much like a bourbon, but we wanted to expand that spectrum of flavor that you can get in what is legally a bourbon. And so it's all virgin oak used in the secondary maturation. So it's a blend of straight bourbon, but it is different types of oak. And each whiskey is designed for the secondary maturation that particular blend went in. And to me, the brief when we were designing it is, if I were to ask you what are some of your favorite releases of bourbon in the whole industry, you might say this year's Four Roses special or small batch. You might say Barrell Bourbon batch, 23. We were in a lot of conversations about what are some of your favorite releases ever. The purpose of Vantage to us is when someone says, what's your favorite bourbon? Full stop. We want the answer to be Vantage. And in order to do that, not only do you have to invest in making something consistent and frankly reasonably affordable, but you also have to invest in the challenge of not only making so many bottles that the people who search them out find them and there's none left for anyone else. You have to make enough so that anyone who wants to finish the bottle at home can go and buy another one, and anyone who wants to recommend it to their friend can go and find it where they live. And then you have to invest in getting it into all those places and making it possible for people to find it. And so if you think about together we made Monday Suck Bourbon. We could make 3 bottles and put them up for sale right now, and there's 3 people in the chat that would buy them. And we could make 30 bottles and they would probably sell out by the end of the day tomorrow, if not right now. We could make like 400 or 500 bottles and they'd sell out this week. We could make 1,000 bottles and they'd probably sell out this month or next month. Somewhere there's a moment where the work becomes finding people and making promises to them about how good the whiskey is, and having them still be able to get one to prove that your promise was right. And that is the hardest part about working for a whiskey brand. But it's also the part that is what the really, truly successful brands have found ways of doing.
But hear me out on this. And have you, Tim, have you tried the Vantage? Is it just me, or the profile seem like young whiskey? Because I've had a lot of barrels. Barrels seem to actually always have that, what I call the sweet spot of whiskey, right? You guys always know that perfect 6 to 7 years old type of profile sit with the, what I call the average bourbon drinker. When I had Vantage, my pro on the Vantage is the layer of flavor, right? The how the flavor intrigues me was there. I'm like, okay, I can see this layer of flavor, but it just tasted young.
Yeah, it's super grainy.
It's
It
really grainy, right? And for me, it was like, what is it? Because I know Mizorana barrels, affect a whiskey in the taste, but I
Yeah,
and
so
again, no
it
offense to you guys, but I was like, are they trying to pawn some young
no,
whiskey on
I
that?
don't take any offense to it. It's interesting to me that you say grainy because the age of the bourbons that go into Vantage is extremely similar to the age blend of Bourbon 33.
Really?
What I think that you're tasting is young wood.
Okay.
And the reason for that is the secondary maturation is 1 month to 2 years, depending on the barrel. And so you have oak that has not oxidized for as long in something that saw a secondary maturation in virgin oak. And so there isn't young whiskey in it, but there is wood congener that did not sit in the whiskey for as long.
Okay.
And
Okay.
some people pull that as grain, but really what it tastes like sort of young wood a little bit. And that was the hardest part about this blend, is that a lot of the flavors that people think they don't like about young whiskey are actually because they don't like young wood.
Mm-hmm.
However, we are adding virgin oak onto an already very well aged old set of bourbon barrels. And so there's so much wood in it. If we leave it in the secondary maturation for too long, we just get so much oak that it becomes like putting sticks in your mouth. And so finding the optimal moment to pull out of the secondary maturation is very complicated, and it involves monitoring a lot of barrels at the same time. And there's no good recipe to it because based on the temperature fluctuation of where the barrels are, it may be 2 months, it may be 6 months, it may be a year. And so it's interesting to me that you say grain forward, because I never want to be someone who's apologizing for young whiskey. There's amazing young whiskey out there, and we don't use a whole lot of young whiskey, but we use some young whiskey. But Vantage is interesting because there's actually not any young bourbon in Vantage, but there is young wood.
So why not be age transparent in this batch? You guys are super transparent about age in all your other batches and your special releases. This, it doesn't say anything. I mean, even you could go to the page and look at specs, and there's not a single mention of how old the whiskey is in here. So
Yeah,
if
and
there's
that's
not young whiskey in here, how come you guys aren't being transparent about it?
well, there actually is baked into it, because in a blend of straights, you have to put the age statement on it if it's younger than 4.
But
And
why not?
so,
But why not say what's in it?
Again, and I just want to be careful because I don't want, like, I'm on your team with this. I don't want to seem
Oh,
like
for
I'm
sure.
defending things. I think with Vantage, we don't want to have to redo the label. We don't want different releases of it under different colas. And so there's a little bit of a scarlet letter that comes with putting a 4 or a 5-year-old age statement on something that uses a lot older whiskey in it also. And we are really dedicated to that on the batches, because each one we want to show sort of what's going on with each batch. But in the evergreen,
knowing how you guys work, would you say that the next vintage profile may change?
No. So the reason, one of the reasons Vantage took so long to get right is we had to make sure that we could produce the profile in perpetuity the way that we do Seagrass or Dovetail or Armida.
Okay.
And in order to do that, there has to be a lot of flexibility on age statement, but not in a huge way, in a 4, 5, 6 at the bottom way and a 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 at the top way. And so ultimately what's going to happen with Vantage, because of all the carryover blending, is it will always be a 4 or a 5 to a whatever the oldest thing that ever went into it age statement. But it just, from a label convention standpoint, it made the most sense to have it be a non-age stated, but still a blend of straights, so a 4-year-old age statement.
So I get the whole cola thing. Like having to redo a label is a pain in the ass, and having to get a label approved is also a pain in the ass.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as like a shelf talker or a breakdown on your guys' page, I mean, you don't have to have cola approval on a paragraph that you write about a bottle that you post on your page. So why not show transparency there?
That's a good note, and I'll talk to Joe about how we might be able to do that. We also have to be careful about we have to do something that is all-encompassing or vague enough that if I tell you about Vantage, it will be true about every bottle of Vantage you have. And there's ways to write that. And it's something that we can work on sort of in our communication and the way that what is part of my job and is something that is always worth taking apart and putting back together is how do you communicate what is really important about the whiskey without giving so much that people are going to pick and choose what is or isn't important to you. Correct. And so Vantage from a communication standpoint, from the part of my job that I take most seriously is and always will be a little bit of a work in progress because we want to figure out how to say what is really important about it at the right moments. And
sure.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable thing to point out.
You see, we told you this show is not fair. we go straight to the jugular and we ask the right question.
No, but I love it. I feel so lucky to be in a position with a company that lets me speak my mind about our whiskeys and to have been someone who has gotten to be in the room when these decisions are made and to be able to be honest about it. And like you were saying at the beginning of the show, I know when I drink things other than the whiskeys that I'm involved with. I drink more personally, politically than anything else now. I drink the things from the people that I want to support.
Correct.
That's what makes me enjoy something.
Correct.
And it's hard when you are an ambassador or a salesperson or whatever it is to not be a talking head about your product because it's the job. And so the moments that I can be genuine about it, which I try to do as often as possible, it's like, yeah, someone says there's something that the information they couldn't find easily and would have mattered to them. I'm not going to promise you it's going to change, but I promise you that I'm part of the conversation about changing it and I'm hearing what you have to say.
Absolutely.
Dope.
Absolutely. We appreciate that. So we'll go to the last segment of this tasting, which is what I call your premium product that come out of Barrell. Shout out to whomever made this Barrell boxes. That person, I definitely need a kudos. They do owe me $25, but that's just me talking. Because the first time I ever had a Barrell bourbon, I did not want to open it, but because I did not understand how the box worked, I almost messed up with the thing. But the real awesome place was making sure you have a bottle that also, if you guys pay attention, that have a hole inside of the cork to actually hold on to the thing that you have. So it's pretty dope when you actually have that. These are your premium product, usually vary between $2.99 and $5.99, depending on which one you have.
So anything that is a black box and a gray label will be somewhere between $250 and $300, depending on the state in the store. And anything that's
beside your New Year thing, you
so the New Year's a white label, and that will be the same price as the batches. New Year is a batch. It's just the one that comes out at the end of the year to celebrate the New Year.
Did you say it's a batch?
So the New Year bourbon is produced like a batch.
Why is it $500 then?
It's never $500.
I'm not even
$80.
I am not even joking. The New Year's was $459 retail. We're talking about somebody who I know personally that own a store. And I'm like, oh yeah, I can just have it at the.
If you please, it doesn't have to be on air, but please let me know what store is selling the New Year bourbon.
I'm telling you, that New Year's sat on that person's shelf forever, and he even asked, he's like, how do we?
Yeah, that's the reason it sat there is because people could walk down the street and get it for $85 at Total Wine.
The New Year's?
Yeah.
Are we talking about the same thing, that orange looking box?
No, so that's the gold label bourbon.
Okay, what's the difference between the gold label and the
So the gold label comes in the box the way that you're like the boxes you were showing, but it's a red box.
Correct. It's like burgundy,
and
like
we only make
burgundy
a couple thousand bottles of that for the whole year.
Okay.
And that is the bourbon is a 16 to 18-year-old blend.
Okay.
The New Year bourbon, which has a white label, does not come with a gift box. Comes out on December 1st, and it's our end of the year batch. And it has a vintage on it. So this year will be the New Year bourbon 2023. It's released as a celebration of still being an independently owned company and being able to experiment. We usually use more micro distillery bourbon in the New Year bourbon every year than we do in the rest of the batches. So we sort of highlight new distillery partners for the first time in the New Year bourbon.
Okay. So the one you send us is the craft bourbon.
Is the gray label, yeah.
One?
That's this year's release, yes.
So every year, what are the premium ones that you guys come up with every year? Because I haven't bought a premium. I think the last one I bought was the Seagrass. The Seagrass one that you come. So what is the difference between the regular Seagrass, the regular batch, and this premium ones that are out?
So it's the age of the barrels and the process and the rarity and or expense of them and the process that we use to make them. And so in bourbon and Seagrass and Dovetail now, there's the core, which is all the same price, and then there's the gray label, which is we're tasting the gray label bourbon, which is based around a 15-year-old blend. Though there's a small amount of very high proof younger bourbon in it this year. And then there's the gold label.
I have mine from 2019, and he said this is a 15-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
This is not 15-year-old.
That
we're drinking.
It is very much 15 in terms of its makeup. It is not legally a 15-year-old bourbon, so we took it off the label.
Because I will tell you right now, I opened this one to celebrate 2020. And I'm telling you, it was marshmallow, burnt caramel cookies. I still have the post on my IG. It was one of those whiskey that we used to have a segment that is whiskey that made you go, what the fuck? That was my whiskey that made me go, what the fuck, back in 2020, because it was just one of those whiskeys that I was just so blown away, and I didn't regret opening it, even though I was like, I bought this on a secondary market. Because Barrell was not available in Nebraska or anywhere around at that time. And I was like, I had to have it. And it was, but that one in 2019 is 106 proof. This is 100.58. Is this already released or gonna be released?
This just was released a couple weeks ago.
So we are tasting something that just got,
and it hasn't reached the shelf everywhere yet, but it is available in some places.
So for all of you guys, you get a chance to actually have our first reaction to the new Bourbon Barrel, which retail usually about $250, right?
Yeah,
$250. So tell us a little bit about this premium, your premium or this premium.
So it's based around this 15-year-old vatting that we do. What is unique about the gray label bourbon each year is we produce it at the beginning of the year, and then we let it sit to oxidize with air circulating above it for like 6 to 8 months. The idea being to blow off ethanol to concentrate all the flavor of like an 120 something proof bourbon into something that's closer to 100. And what we did last year and this year, although we really started talking about it more this year, is we used these really beautiful 36-month cured ex-bourbon barrels to do that oxidation process for the year. And so we filled them about halfway and we left them for most of the year. We called it select cooperage. And it's very rare that people use wood of that quality for bourbon barrels. It almost always goes into high-end domestic wine barrels. But it allowed us to get this like really umptious, chewy quality to the bourbon, which has been the sort of trademark of this whiskey since we produced it for the first time in 2018. What happened this year is it blew off so much ethanol that it actually got a little bit lower than we wanted it to be, and so we
Yeah, it's 100.
reintroduced some
I've
hybrid
never
bourbon into it.
seen any of your premium product under 105.
Yeah, I think we had this at 104 1 year was the lowest it had been before this.
Yeah, but this one is 100.58.
Yeah, it's just over 100.
For somebody to say cast strength and say 100.8 is, is like an oxymoron.
Yeah, and it's a lot of what I was talking before about the water soluble cogeners that it's still at cast strength, but it pulls very different things out of the wood at a lower proof.
So I will say this from someone who's been a huge fan of this line. Batch 1 was probably the best bourbon I ever put in my mouth.
Mm-hmm. You're talking about the first gray label.
The first gray label. This is a far cry from that.
Okay.
And I'm kind of bummed out because learning about your process and going to your page and reading about this, it feels like something got messed up along the way. And you guys dumped some young whiskey in it that was aged in 36-month-old barrels, which you got 3-year-old oak. You get some of that old oak instead of young oak when you have young bourbon to cover up or fix whatever got messed up. Hence why the age statement is gone. So it's good, but it definitely, for me, like what I'm used to drinking for this line, because it's, like I said, batch 1 was fucking incredible.
Dude,
this is kind of a bummer, man.
Like, I told everybody you need to get a barrel, man. But this for me is very Tennessee whiskey forward. I won't even say it's young because it has. I mean, this whiskey stands on its own, but it reminds me of more of a Tennessee whiskey. That's what I'm getting on the. I wouldn't go as far as a young whiskey because for me, it sustains. It can stand on its own. Will I compare it to your other? Again, knowing that I've actually had a taste of all the your premium, literally this is how much I invested in Barrell. One to drink, one to keep, right? Because for me, it's just so fucking extraordinary what you guys do with the gray labels, right? So what you see here is what I pull out of the bunker to show you what I have. I respect what you guys do with this gray labels. So, and again, I'm coming from a French country. They always say you can't disrespect an artiste because you are not an artiste, right? And disrespect an artiste because the painter knows what, or the art maker knows what his intention was, but you can judge it, but you can disrespect it. You know what I'm saying? You can judge it, but you can disrespect. So to be fair and balanced here, when we are talking about Indiana, Kentucky, and Tennessee, usually I cannot what you guys produce. I cannot make a distinction between those three. It's just barrel. You know what I'm saying? It's just barrel. But here, I can make a distinction. So what Tim is saying, I can understand it because I'm making a distinction to know that this is very Tennessee forward versus actually what I call barrel. Barrel is your profile. Is like you say, it's that meal you made. I mean, get a little bit of spice, a little bit of clove, a little bit of that. I can get a little bit of this, but I cannot really say. I can point out what is in the food, right? I can point it out. I'm sorry to say, but this one I can tell exactly what ingredient took over the other ingredients. You know what I'm saying? I think that will be the best way. Knowing now how you explain to us how we work, and I respect how you explain it because as somebody who loves to cook, now I know. Maybe I put a little bit of salt in it. more than normal that I cook. Maybe I put too much of the paprika in, or I put a little too much of the this in it, or the this saffron or cloves took over as more than what I wanted it to be. Because now, funny thing is, you made me now be how I taste barrel is gonna be completely different.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not tasting it like how I taste food. It's gonna be nose. It's gonna be layer of ingredient and which ingredient is more powerful than others. And the Tennessee on this one, so I would definitely say if you love Tennessee whiskey, you're gonna love this one because it's much more forward there. Me, I love more, I would say more of a the Kentucky side slash Indiana side. You know, I like the chewy slash very fruity, juicy type of whiskey with a little bit of finish of that oak spicy. Everybody knows here that it took me only 7 years to actually accept that Jack Daniel can make excellent whiskey. You can tell already that when something is a little bit too Tennessee forward, I'm the first one to jump in and go, I can taste it, right? And that's that thing. So I would definitely say this is definitely not, you know, a bad whiskey, it's good whiskey. But I can tell which ingredient is a little much forward than other ingredients.
Interesting. I like what you say about the, not disrespecting an artist, and I
Correct.
think that people go a little bit too far sometimes in the whiskey world to portray themselves as artistes. At the same time, what I love about being on shows like this, and the part of my job, which I spend a lot of my day sending passive aggressive emails to distributors. And then, once or twice a week, I get to like come and talk shit about whiskey with people, except people care what I have to say now.
Yeah.
And I'll never be the guest that shies away from people criticizing or asking hard questions. And I love that with Barrell, we stand by the whiskeys that we make. This is, I agree that the first one was this exists because of that first blend.
Oh yeah.
But actually, like, I find this one to be more intriguing than a lot of other ones because it has a larger variety of things in it than it ever has before. But I think also part of that is like, I get to taste a ton of really good old whiskey, and I'm kind of bored by it sometimes,
Let's be honest. This exists because Batch 9, those barrels that went into Batch 9 were stellar. And you held on to some. I'm just quoting Joe on this because this is okay. So correct me if I'm wrong.
You've dropped enough pieces of more about our company than you've let on.
I weave in and out of things, man.
Yeah.
But regardless, at the end of the day, this is still a beautiful product. Like,
it is.
I'm always gonna be.
For me personally, won't be something I would jump on. Why? Because everybody knows that me and Tennessee have a fight for a long time, and unless you're giving me amazing rye from Tennessee, I'm not interested. Right? I'm not interested. But for that reason, I'm very picky. I'm so big, and Tim and everybody that follow our shows knows this. Tennessee whiskey and I have a beef going on. It's unspoken because of the profile. It reminds me specifically of how I grew up in an environment that the taste is just off for me. So when that taste is there, it throws me off. But
I remember when I was in Graham. Sorry, I cut you off. I don't want to finish.
No, you're fine. I'm the same guy that actually literally is nursing, right? Literally nursing. I'm not even joking. Nursing my barrel. Like, I remember the first time somebody wanted to share this with me. I said, you get 2 ounces. That's what you get. Because this is what Jesus intended bourbon to be. So you get 2 ounces, and that's all you get. That that tells you a lot about a 3-year-old bottle that I opened, and I'm not even a half of the bottle. That's how much I respect what went into this
I
bottle.
had a bottle for a long time of Talisker 30.
Mm,
Ooh,
One of my favorite whiskeys.
now you speaking my language.
let's go.
And I drank the first bottle of Talisker 30, the first half of the bottle of Talisker 30 so fast because anytime I'd have a bad day, and at the time, like did not have a lot of fancy. I have a lot of fancy bottles of whiskey now, but I did not at the time. And I got through half of it because anytime anyone came to my house and I wanted to have like a really important drink with them, so I'd say I drank the first half of that bottle in 6 months, and then I drank the second half in like 6 years.
Yeah.
And I was at the very bottom where I'd like anytime I'd have a new scotch and I wanted to see how much I really liked it. So I'd give myself a little bit of the Talisker 30 and be like, which one? And then I was so close to the bottom of it, and I was going through duty free in like Naples or something. Like it was like a international but small airport, and there was Talisker 30 for like 320 euros, like some like still expensive but really good price. And I was like, fuck yeah! I went home and I finished the bottle, and I still haven't even opened the. I still have the full bottle of Talisker 30 because it's like I know the minute I open it, I'm going to go through half the bottle again. Like,
sure.
But I was so excited to finish my first bottle because I like found the backup for it.
That's how I feel about Batch 9. Batch 9 will forever be my unicorn. If anyone asks me what if I could have one bottle, what do I wish it could be? It would be Barrell Batch 9. Mm-hmm. That bottle of whiskey is delicious. I've easily drank a case of it myself. And if I could have anything, this goes out to everybody right now watching this, maybe watching the recast. You want to get me a special gift.
I wouldn't even know where to send someone to get one at this point.
Neither would I. Like it's I'll probably never see another one ever again. And if I see another Batch Barrel 9, I will probably
this right here
die.
Is it. Batch 9 is not it. This right here, this 15 years.
You didn't get to have Batch 9.
I will tell you. I
will tell you. Batch 9
had a sample of batch. I think the sample I Batch 12.
Batch 9 is the shit. The reason Gray Label exists is because of Batch 9. Batch 9 is. You want a unicorn to chase? Go look for a Barrell Batch 9.
The true unicorns of the whiskey industry are the great things that people didn't notice when they came out.
That is true. I tell people that all the time. You did not notice it. It came, it went, and you were gone.
The wax top 4-year Willet Rye.
Yeah.
That just kind of disappeared one day.
Yeah.
Beautiful. The Balvenie 17 Madeira from like, I don't know, was that like 7 years ago?
Yeah, Balvenie 17 Madeira. What do you call it?
Jack probably has one of those.
The Bowmore.
The Devil's Cast? The Bowmore Devil's Cast?
The Bowmore Devil Cast when he came out and no one actually paid attention.
Yeah.
When Bunnahabhain released 2017 their distillery, the Isla cask only for the distillery. No one actually even wanted that. When Octomore ever released their first Arctic Octomore, which is the 3.1, when no one wanted to actually talk about it at that time.
The first couple Bruichladdich Black Arts.
Yeah, not even the new Black Art are bullshit, but go back 6 years ago, when Cavallon released their 10-year finish in a Bordeaux cask,
or since you said Cavallon, Amrut when they had the malted rye.
Yes, so things that people were so new to this, and no one actually even paid attention to that thing at that time. When I can go on for days.
Yeah.
When no one actually paid attention to Orphan Barrel, the first 3 edition of the Orphan Barrels when they came out, and now people wish they had Orphan Barrels, that are out there. When New Riff started releasing the original single barrels, no one actually even paid attention to New Riff single barrels. Those were actually 115 to 120 proof. when Yamazaki was out, when Yamazaki 21 years old was out,
Yeah.
and no one actually cared about Japanese
Nika
whiskey at that
15.
time.
Yep. Sure.
No one cared.
I remember
And
when I worked for an auction house when I was leaving, I had the opportunity to buy Yamazaki 18 for $210 a bottle. And I laughed. I was like, I'm not spending that much on that. Are you fucking kidding me?
correct.
And
You done fucked up.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the thing is, like, what I'm sad about is that as a reference bottle would be a really nice thing to have. But I'm definitely not spending whatever it costs to have a Yamazaki 18 right now.
Dude,
Um,
I have the Yamazaki 18 and 21. And the person that sold me at that time said literally, here's this how it happened. I need life insurance, but I got denied by a company. I said, "Oh, I got you. Let me see your file. I'll see what I can do."
mhm.
Get it to him. We get him approved, get his wife approved, and everything is fine. He goes, "Yeah, I see that you're in the same group as me. When I actually added your number in my phone, Facebook was suggesting you as a friend. You're in the same group as me on a secondary." And I say, "Oh yeah, yeah, yeah." He's like, "Oh, are you into Japanese whiskey at all?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I do Japanese whiskey, but they get so expensive now." He's like, he's like, "For $600, I can get you Yamazaki 21 and 18."
Damn.
I said, "The real one or the fake one?"
I work for a whiskey company, so I stay out of all secondary conversations.
And then next thing I knew, he was in my house. He sent me to thank me. He's the first one to send me the Blanton green label, black label, and the Yamazaki 18 and 21. And that cost me $600. And today I can't even open it because I just look at it. It just
Yeah.
looked good on my shelf because it's one of those things that, I Hakushu 21, 18, and all those. And that's what I tell people is that, it's always good to support a brand when the brand is new. Like, I literally bought Barrel on the secondary market. At that time, that person was selling it to me at $210, and he thought he was making a profit.
Mm.
4 years ago. Today, you can't find this barrel anymore. So, I always, when you guys are releasing your premium thing, I live under FOMO, and I always buy any of your newest premium release. Again, the New Year, fuck the New Year release. I'm sorry. For me, $500 is just not it. But beside that, I love the black boxes. I have every single one of them, as you can see. But
Anyway, I hate to do this, but I gotta hop off.
no, absolutely. I will.
Before you go, can I ask you a quick question?
Absolutely.
Do you know what batch that we're drinking? Because out of everything we've had tonight, I'm absolutely in love with this.
The Seagrass.
And
So
I need a bottle of this batch.
So quickly, just to correct your verbiage a little bit, we're careful not to use the word batch when we're
There's no
talking
batch
about.
in Seagrass.
We would call it a vatting, just so as to not confuse with the batches of bourbon.
I just need to know what number to look for in this corner.
I will find out for you.
Okay.
It is
119.3
whatever
is the proof.
the newest one is, because
Okay.
they bottle the sample bottles at the distillery as they're bottling the newest thing.
Got it.
So my guess would be that the vatting that comes from actually isn't on the market yet.
Okay.
But I can find out for you.
Please let me know.
That was delicious.
It was fantastic.
Will, I can chat with you all day because I love the fact that you're not just a bourbon person.
Mm-hmm.
You actually speak single malt, and that's where I live every day. Thank you for coming. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you being here. Thank you for actually taking our shenanigans and
of course. Thank you so much for having me.
And this will be posted later on, but I love the fact that you're not afraid to answer the hard question. You're not afraid to actually talk about what you guys are doing. I'm telling you right now, you see, a lot of people love what you guys are doing. I love the fact that, but I wish the price was a little lower. Again, we did mention that before, Jeff. Barrel is they know what they're putting out there, and for the cask strength whiskey that you're getting, a lot of whiskeys are not coming at cask strength. For the cask strength whiskey that you're getting, obviously you know that you're getting good quality whiskey that is there. If you watch the recast later, you can tell the process they're doing and making sure they keep integrity. It's like eating from a chef versus eating from McDonald's.
Well, thank you. But
That's really what I feel like the best way to put it. If somebody asks me again next time, oh, why would I spend $80 on a barrel? I said, would you want McDonald's or do you want a chef? That's really what it's down to.
Since you guys don't pull any punches, that when you say nice things, it matters that much. It means that much more.
No, but like I told you, this we are very honest and we are very straight to the point and pure here. This is not a confrontational thing. This is really about making sure that we all are bringing truth to what you do. We are bringing an integrity, and every interview we ever had where we ask hard questions, I would tell you right now, people have seen rise in sales because now people know that the company answered their question, and when they're spending the money, they have no problem spending it because they heard it from the company itself.
Well, cool.
So as you're here, I will tell you right now, thank you for being here. This is Monday Sucks. This is your house now. So anytime you want to be here, feel free to come.
Cool.
This
Sounds
is your
good.
house now. But we are not letting you go without asking you our last question that we ask every guest.
Okay.
Every guest have to answer this question. Because this is Monday Sucks, we have to ask you, you have to give us one advice that does not suck. It's something that you heard from your mentor, your grandpa, your spiritual guru, whatever, whomever inspired you in the word, one thing that you live by, you truly believe in, that you can inspire the people with. One advice.
You are giving me license to be didactic, so it is okay to be the friend that is always the one to reach out.
Wow.
I had to I had to realize a couple years ago that there are people that are really important to me and they're not as good at staying in touch as I am. And I'm that way to other people too, that they mean a lot to me and I forget to check in with them. And so if there's people that you are close to and matter to you, it is okay to be always the one who sends the text or makes the call.
Damn. I like that you say that because I feel like there's also this stigma of, well, if they don't check in on you, they don't fucking matter.
Yeah, you don't need to play like who's holding out longer text like you're on Tinder with your friends. You know, you think of someone, send them a text and say,
"Oh man, that's beautiful."
Thinking about
Thanks for saying that, man. That's awesome.
That is special, Brandon.
No one's ever given me license to do that on one of these before, so thank you.
Thank you.
Because shit, that is deep. And I have not heard anybody say that. We've had a lot of guests, and we've had a lot of people give us advice that does not suck. But this one,
look, I always take show notes. I wrote that one down.
Oh, awesome.
That one hit me, man. That one hit me. Thank you.
I hope I'll get a text from one of you guys in a couple years being like, I'm reaching out. What's up?
I'm telling you right now, brother, that's the best thing. That's literally, the whiskey is great, but this is the best thing you said on this show.
Thank you.
It is okay to be the friend that always reach out. It's you know what? That hit home, man. That hit home.
Cool.
That really did home.
I'm glad to say it.
I'm glad you came on. I'm glad you came and hung out with us. We are the most unpopular kid in the whiskey YouTube, and we love being that way. And we are glad you came. We're glad to have you here. Thank you so much for giving us the time and day. If you're here, make sure you actually check out barrelbourbon.com. That's the right one, right?
Yep, Barrell Bourbon, barrel with 2 L's.
So I would put it right here on the thing. It's literally Barrell Bourbon. Barrell Bourbon. Yeah, sorry. I had it typed down, but I don't know why it disappeared. It's Barrell Bourbon. Yeah, Barrel Bourbon. Yeah, 2L, right?
Yeah, you put bourbon twice there though.
Because
That's not going. That won't go to our website.
because I'm special. You got to know I'm a special.
Bourbon.
You got to know English is my second language, so you got to forgive me
It's
for
probably
that.
it's probably not even your second language. It's
Your
your third
third,
language, right?
my
Yeah.
fourth one.
There you
Right.
go.
barrelbourbon.com. Make
That
sure
works.
y'all check it out. Go there. And like I said, in Nebraska here where we are, barrels available. They actually have a locator on their website where you can
Yep.
find actually your where it's available.
Yeah.
I will tell you right now. Seagrass in my book of business. First one, you want to grab one of this one. They come usually in the fourth quarter of the year. Make sure you grab yourself one of these so you can actually have what exactly you feel like you have premium. On the second one, if you are a rye lover, make sure you grab yourself a seagrass. You will not regret it. Seagrass is shit. But if you just want to know what exactly these people have been up to, if you're somebody who I always say you just started in whiskey and you want to grab a bottle that you want to see what is it to have multiple layer of flavor, see the vintage. Try the vintage, you'll not be disappointed. But the one thing I know for sure you'll find on every one of your shelf is this bourbon batch. The barrel bourbon, this batch 33, 32. In my opinion, you won probably an even number, so 33 will be it because for me it was it. But according to Barrel, it doesn't matter. Just grab 1, 2, or 3. Try to find as many different batches as possible, and I'll tell you, you'll be in for a treat.
Cool.
Will, thank you so much for coming in. We appreciate you, and anytime.
Yeah, have a great night. Happy Halloween.
You are
Happy
you
Halloween.
are more than happy. Yeah. Happy Halloween. We appreciate you.
Appreciate you.
Yeah.
Cheers, brother.
All right, we are gonna go through the last part of what we have here before we close the show. This is one of our longest show that we have. We actually have this long show in a while. That was pretty good. That advice that does not suck for me actually hit home. I need to do a better job at reaching out, and that is pretty cool. The news of the day. Dr. Pat Heinz just made a lot of money today. If you haven't heard the news, the brand Campari just acquired in their portfolio Wilderness Trail. Wilderness Trail now is part of the Campari. They actually own 70% of Wilderness Trail, and they are actually just holding on. Pat Heinz is just cashed out. He's I'm rich. He's there now. So for all of you guys who don't know, Campari is now acquiring a Wilderness Trail. Wilderness Trail is making amazing whiskey. For all of you guys,
it was a $420 million acquisition,
correct,
at 70%, with an option to buy the other 30% in like 2031 or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, so fuck. I don't, because here's the weird thing. Because all the news that I read and saw today was all Campari did a $600 million acquisition. But when you really break it down, it was only $420 million.
It's $420 million. The people that are saying 600 are just assholes. Then.
So I don't know if the $600 million is to acquire the other 30%.
Yeah, the other 30% will be that, but truly, that's not gonna happen right now. So
regardless, I mean, it's still fucking huge.
I'll only send a message to Macaulay and say, Macaulay, are you getting a pay raise now?
Are we still friends? Can we still hang out?
Yeah.
Man, it's I
truly believe.
I have so many mixed feelings about it because.
Why?
Here's why. I will tell you why. Because I feel like now, and saying this too, this is coming from a place of me talking to people that I'm friends with and that own a brand that's their own, that's in this space, right? And some of them are saying my end goal is to create something that is superior to others to get the attention of a big name and get bought out. And me go, I'm done. I did my dues. I got a check. And
I don't know. I don't think a lot of people just want to get out because
they don't. But there is a lot of brands right now for sale.
Wow. Are you sure?
Oh, 100%. 100% Wilderness Trail has been for sale for a fucking minute. This isn't a new thing. Like, they've been for sale for a minute. There's a lot of brands and there's a lot of people that are trying to get out. If you go and search on the back end, talk to somebody who knows somebody that's actually in this industry that's looking at things. There's a lot of brands that are trying to get bought out right now. But I mean, fucking props to them. Kudos to them. That's awesome. I'm stoked that they got a paycheck and they got out. But I don't know. It feels I don't know. It's like a bittersweet thing. Is Wilderness Trail going to keep being great? Because I mean, I have some great Wilderness Trail. I've drank some great Wilderness Trail. I've been very curious to see what's going to happen with that brand. But yeah, I don't know, man.
I'm sure some people may feel like you feel.
Oh, of course. And then there's some people that don't give a shit.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, some people don't care.
Nah, I would be willing to bet that the majority of people don't give a shit. I would be willing to bet that, which is fine. It's still really interesting, though. Yeah, it's still really interesting.
For me, is I don't know. For me, is just it's okay. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, 100%.
I'm happy for I'm happy for them because I truly believe they've earned that right. They put in the work.
Absolutely, they put in the work.
They've put in that work. They've done their best to make sure that this is, you know, I mean,
they've also created a core product for tons of brands before they were even making their own thing.
Correct. They've been doing contract distilling for how long?
But it's not even that. I'm talking about making yeast strains. I'm talking about creating a yeast strain for a brand.
Creating yeast strain, doing contract distill, doing all the things that most people don't do.
Right. So I mean, they've put in the work, and they have, they've been a brand for around 8 years producing whiskey.
About
they were doing
9 years now. Yeah,
they were doing shit before that too. So they've definitely put in the work. They've definitely paid their dues, and I think it's awesome. I'm stoked. I just think this is. I think this might be kind of an awakening to see what's going to happen in this industry with craft going forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm very interested
I would
to
definitely
see.
I would definitely say I'm happy for them. I truly believe that. I truly believe that a lot more people will see this as a way to keep making amazing product, because eventually, one thing here's the pro. Pro is now Wilderness Trail have access to worldwide distribution and production.
Yep.
Right. That's a pro.
Absolutely.
Which means that Wilderness Trail can hire more people in to actually produce more Wilderness Trail whiskey. Knowing that they produce quality whiskey, I'm not actually worried about what they can produce. Everything is about dollar sign, which means some part of the operation may be cut. Some people may lose their job, or some people may become irrelevant. Some vendors may be cut out. So the economy that they boost somewhere in Kentucky may be affected. But I think just Pint Heist and his partner have tried their best to actually keep a good family-owned / good operation, to know that, I'm sure they would take care of their own people.
I would go as far as, I wouldn't even say they've tried the best. I would say they've done the best. I think they've done a fucking bang-up job. I mean, they really have.
So I will have to give him that.
Yeah, absolutely.
On whiskey news, what do we have? That was our whiskey news.
That was our whiskey news.
That was our whiskey
that was
news.
kind of the big whiskey news.
On upcoming news, for you guys, if you're not a patron or subscribe on my IG, we got some amazing thing coming out. Wilderness Penelope Hood Sommelier X Silbacks is coming out. And Patreon will be the first one to have access. There's only 50 bottles available.
Holy shit.
We blended this one, and 8 people all agreed that this was amazing. Wilderness Trail, my rye from Wilderness Trail, me and Wendy actually, tantric day with the bourbon shrimp and with Macaulay himself, sat around the whole day, roaming around Wilderness Trail to find the barrel that will speak to our soul. And that one did. Is about to come out as well. 210 bottles came out of that barrel.
Wow. So, okay. Sure.
That's gonna be good.
We got some really cool stuff coming up on the show.
Virginia Distillery is also another one coming out. Upcoming news, we have some cool guests coming out on the show.
Next week we will have Dueling Grounds. Which
is the first time I've ever heard of them.
Which is fine because it is a Kentucky only product at the moment, but a really fucking cool product and a product that should definitely be on your radar, which is why they're going to be on the show.
Okay.
The following week after that, we're going to have Hidden Barn. Jackie Zykan herself. I'm going to cross my fingers because this lady has been eluding Jack and I for at least 3 years. And the fact that we're actually going to get to sit down and talk to her.
The same question is going to be, Jackie, let's clear this out. Why do you hate me?
So, fingers crossed. I mean, we have them on the books.
I still haven't received a sample yet. So, till I get a sample, it doesn't look like it's going to happen.
And then the 21st, we're going to have Pinhook.
Yeah.
I'm super stoked about that. The 28th, we're going to have Buzzard's Roost.
Buzzard's Roost is the 28th.
And then we'll save next month to get to next month. That's the November's book, baby.
Next month, there's a lot happening.
There's a lot happening.
There's a lot happening next month, and I have a brand that I'm trying to bring on next month, and I'm like, our calendar is already packed.
We got to push them to December.
I literally have to push. No, I have to literally push people to January.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, that's right, because oh shit, December's full actually.
I know.
Oh well. Guess what, guys? We'll see you next year.
So it's a good thing to have. But for all of you guys here, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you being here at all times, supporting what we do. Make sure you join the Patreon to actually know exactly what's happening and know when barrel picks are coming out. And for all of you guys that support our show, make sure you follow the channel. Send it to your friend. Let's get to 3,000. I think right now we're about 29 something. Let's get to 3,000 followers and celebrate. So for all of you guys here, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you. We love you. And make sure you grab yourself a bottle of barrel and tell us what you think. If you have any comment, make sure you come and comment on the show. And if you want to see a guest on the show, a brand on the show, make sure you send us a message and we'll make sure that we actually jump in and invite them over. Most people are afraid to talk to us because we're the knucklehead of the whiskey industry, but we appreciate you guys believing in us, trusting in us. Make sure you follow the Facebook page. Make sure you follow the YouTube page. And I'm also on Twitter. I will drop a question this week on Twitter. Twitter is also Hood Sommelier. No, it's TT Jack 1 on Twitter. But the name is Hood Sommelier. Make sure that you actually look it up. I start asking crazy questions on Twitter because we have a segment called You Tweet, I Pour. I like to ask crazy questions and get the words answered, and we go from there. For all of you guys here, thank you for being here. Happy Monday. Happy Halloween to you and your kid. Hopefully, you wake up tonight and eat all your kids' candy so they can cry tomorrow morning.
I want to see videos.
I want to see.
I ate all your candy.
I ate all your candy. Happy Monday, and we'll see you next time.